Peace, good people. It's your good sis, Morgan Renee Myers. Ooh, had to get my hydration. That live alkaline water get me right every time, baby. We're back in Let the Circle Be Unbroken, the sequel to, let me take this down. The sequel to Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. Today is February 14th, 2025, as I'm reading this. So you see me decked out in all my love gear. And we're going to get right into this. We're in chapter 8 today. One moment, because I'm recording on Facebook. And, okay, here we go. Chapter 8. Stacy was changing. In the last year, he had grown more than a foot, making him taller than Mama and nearly as tall as Papa. In addition to his new height, his voice had deepened. One morning, several months ago, he had awakened speaking in somebody else's baritone. I told him to clear his throat, but he insisted that nothing was wrong with his throat and informed me that all boys' voice changed. Although I had been aware of Clarence's and Mo's voice cracking up and down the vocal scale, Stacy had undergone none of that. When I asked him why he hasn't, he answered that he was just lucky, he guessed. I suppose he guessed he was lucky as well to have what he called his mustache, a simple fuzz line which he cultivated with delicate daily care and about which, upon Mama's advice, I wisely kept quiet. Had the change in Stacy been only physical, I think I could have handled it better, but unfortunately, the change had affected other areas as well. Now 14, he was a very private person and much preferred to be off by himself somewhere or with little Willie, Clarence, or Mo rather than with Christopher John, little man, and me. And I frankly resented it. I'd always accepted Stacy's need to have friends of his own age, just as the rest of us did, but always before Christopher John, little man, and I had been accepted, no matter how grudgingly in whatever he was doing, and he had to some extent confided in us. Now, too often, we were hearing that we were too young to listen to something, or that something or other did not concern us, and the confidences became fewer and farther between. Sometimes, in an attempt to keep things as they had been, I followed Stacy when he went off alone or with one of his friends. Most times he tried to send me back. Other times he simply ignored me. I hadn't yet decided which bothered me most. Once when Mo came over and he and Stacy crossed the road to the forest, I sat for some time debating whether or not to follow. Finally, deciding that I had just as much right to be in the forest as they did, I wound my way among the trees to the clearing, where I found them sitting on the bank of the pond, their backs to me. Neither noticed me as I approached, and not feeling like arguing with Stacy on this particular day, I settled down some feet away without a word to them. With my hands cupping my head and my eyes on the circle of sunlight sifting softly. Okay. Little alliteration. With my hands cupping my head and my eyes on the circle of sunlight sifting softly through the magic of forest green above, I lay comfortably upon a cushiony mattress of pine needles, enjoying the stillness of the forest and paying little attention to Stacy's and Mo's conversation. After all, I had not come to eavesdrop. But then Stacy said, "You heard any more about J.C. Peters? I mean, about her being with Stuart Walker and Joe Billy?" My ears perked up. Anything to do with J.C. Peters these days caught my attention. Mo shook his head. Nothing except for that time at school. And, oh yeah, little Willie did say something about Clarice and J.C. walking over to Aunt Callie Jackson's and Stuart and them coming along and offering them a ride. But they didn't get in the car, did they? Mo laughed softly. Little Willie said he didn't know, but J.C.'s folks didn't know about J.C.'s folks, but if Clarice had gotten in that car, by the time Mr. Wiggins had have got through with her, she wouldn't have been able to sit for a good week. But you ain't heard nothing else? Mo turned curiously toward Stacy and looked at him for a long moment before answering. "No, I ain't heard nothing else." He hesitated, glanced out toward the pond, then back at Stacy. "How come you so interested in J.C. Peters all of a sudden? What, you kind of liking her or something?" Now it was Stacy who was quiet. He threw a pebble into the pond and shrugged. "Oh, I don't know. I mean, she's pretty and she's smart and she got a way about her. But you worry about maybe her messing around with Joe, Billy, and Stuart?" Stacy nodded. "She messing around with white boys. I don't want to waste my time with her." Again, Mo laughed his good-natured laugh. "Stacy, man, you probably be wasting your time anyway. That girl's 2 years older than you." Stacy laughed too. "You're probably right, but I don't know. Sometimes I seen her looking at me like maybe she wouldn't mind me talking to her." Well, you think like that, then go on and it won't hurt nothing. Like you said, she is awful pretty and she's real nice. I ain't never heard no bad talk about her, so I wouldn't worry none about Stuart or Joe Billy. I guess I won't. I was thinking maybe this Sunday at church confound it. I leapt up from my bed, having realized too late the giant red ants had gotten there before me. Cassie, what you doing down here? Stacy demanded to know as I danced madly about, swatting at the ants. The pond, Cassie, Mo suggested. Get in the pond. I took his advice and dashed into the water. It rose cool and soothing to my neck. You all right? Mo asked sympathetically. Yeah, I guess. Stacy, however, showed no concern at all for my discomfort. Cassie, you follow me down here? Didn't you ever think maybe me and Mo had something we wanted to talk about in private? Yeah, something private like J.C. Peters, I retorted, angered by his uncanny attitude. If looks could kill, I would have been finished right there. But Stacy deigned to say nothing further concerning it, choosing instead to change the subject. Mo, how's your cotton coming? Mo smiled at me before he answered, showing at least he cared about my misfortune. It's looking good, he said, his voice lifting as it always did whenever he spoke about his cotton. I think it's going to work out for us this time. You know, I hope you're right, Mo, but don't get your hopes up too high. And you know how things turned out last year, and Mo dismissed the reminder with a wave of his hand. I know, but this year it'll be different. You'll see. Stacy looked as if he wanted to say more, but then seemed to reconsider. I just hope you're right, Mo. Stacy, Cassie, ooh, y'all. We looked toward the trail leading back to the house and waited for Christopher John and little man to appear. Twice more they yelled before they actually burst into view. What's the matter? Stacy asked. Y'all guess what? Cried Christopher John. Y'all ain't never gonna guess, exclaimed little man. Well, what? I said. It's Cousin Bud, Christopher John blurted out. He come back. Stacy's face went cold. He's here? Yeah, he's here, Christopher John answered. He just come, and y'all ain't never gonna guess. He brought Suzella. That's his daughter. And Mama, she said that makes her our cousin. So y'all come on, y'all just gotta see her. Ooh, she's so pretty. With that, they turned, and without waiting for us to follow, ran as quickly as they could back toward the house. They sure seem excited enough, laughed Mo as I came from the pond. This cousin of y'all's must be something. Stacy stood without saying anything, and the three of us went back to the house. Expecting to find Cousin Bud and his daughter in Mom and Papa's room, we entered the house through the side door. The room was empty, but with the door open in the dining room, we could see Cousin Bud sitting at the table with Big Ma and Mama. Little man and Christopher John sat on the side bench, but there was no Suzella. Come on in and speak to your Cousin Bud, Mama said. Cassie, how you get so wet? I fell in the pond, I said as we crossed the room. How y'all doing? Asked Cousin Bud, smiling. Fine, I said. Stacy didn't answer. Mama cast a stern eye on him. Stacy. Stacy glanced at her, then back to Cousin Bud. We're fine. You gonna be here long? Cousin Bud's eyes met Stacy's. I think he must have seen a little Uncle Hammer there, for he sighed gently and rubbed his chin. Just a few days. Bring my daughter, Suzella, though. She's going to stay a while. Where is she? I asked. She's in your room changing, Mama answered. Why don't you go on in and meet her? I nodded and left the kitchen, eager to meet this Suzella. All the boys went with me as far as Mama and Papa's room, where they settled in chairs around the darkened hearth. Bring her on out here, Cassie, Mo softly instructed. I want to meet her, too. Thought you said you couldn't stay long, teased Stacy. Did, but there ain't no way I'm going before I see your cousin in there. I pushed open the door and went in. Standing on the far side of the room, on the other side of the bed, was a tall, slender girl, her head bent downward as she pulled a flared A-line skirt over her hips. Her skin had a creamy cast, but was not as pale as I thought it would be, and her hair, which hung loose and long, enveloping her face so that I could not see it, was auburn with deep silky waves. She zipped the skirt, which clung neatly to her womanly figure, and looked up. Her face had the same square jaw cut of Mama's people, and except for the gray eyes and the creamy skin tone, her resemblance to Mama was striking. A smile spread brightly across her face as she saw me, and she said, You must be Cassie. I nodded. Well, I'm Suzella, but you can call me Sue if you want. That's what my friends at school call me. I started to say that I thought she didn't have any friends, but deciding that would be impolite, I said nothing at all. Daddy told me about you, she continued. Did? Mm-hmm. He told me about all of you. Stacy, Christopher John, and little man. I already love Christopher John and little man. They're adorable. Is Stacy here? I motioned toward the door behind me. He's out there. Oh, I really want to meet him too. Daddy says we're nearly the same age. He ain't but 14. Suzella picked up one of her dresses from the bed and laid it neatly over a chair. Well, I'm 15, so I guess a year's not so much. Uh-huh. You gonna be here long? Well, I don't know. Daddy's going back in a day or so, but he wants me to stay a while. He's going back to New York? Suzella nodded. Alone? I mean, he's going to live by himself? Suzella had just reached for another dress from her suitcase. She stopped and looked at me. No, my mother's there. She is? But I thought that she... I stopped short, realizing that I was about to say too much. Suzella glanced down at her suitcase, then back at me. Did Daddy tell you he and Mother were separated? I mean, they were, but Mother's home again now. They just had a misunderstanding, that's all. I stared at her, and before I took the time to think, I said, what's it like? What's what like? Having a white mama. Now it was she who stared. I mean, I wouldn't even know how to act around her, I contended, baffled by the very thought of a white person living in the same house, let alone having one as a mother. The whole thing seemed incredible to me. Don't you feel kind of funny, her being white and you being colored? The pleasantness of Suzella's face quickly faded, and she said acidly, I am not colored, Cassie. Well, I'd just like to know what you think you are then. She breathed in deeply, her cheeks reddening, then turned back to unpacking. I'm mixed blood. Same thing. She was silent, her eyes downcast. Taking out another dress, she held it a moment, then looked back to me. You say Stacy's out there? Her voice was soft once more, almost apologetic. Uh-huh. Then I want to meet him. This can wait. Making sure that her sleeveless blouse was fully tucked inside her skirt, she rounded the bed and followed me into the other room. As soon as the door opened, Mo and Stacy stood. Little Man and Christopher John remained seated, but they grinned widely, almost glowing as they gazed upon Suzella. Suzella greeted Stacy with adult-like poise, and I could see that the resentment which had been in Stacy's face upon greeting Cousin Bud was not there as he met his daughter. Yeah, well, it's real good to meet you, Stacy said. How long you going to be here? I don't really know. Maybe this summer. You ever live in the country before? Suzella laughed lightly. No, I was born in New York, and except for sometimes getting to go with Daddy to Jersey, I've never even been in the country. Well, I hear living in the city is a whole lot different from living in the country. Sometimes I think maybe I'd like to try living in the city. He stopped abruptly and glanced over at Mo, who had just nudged him. Oh, you didn't meet my friend Mo yet, did you? Well, this here's Mo Turner. Mo, my cousin, Suzella Rankin. Suzella smiled, displaying even white teeth, and held out her hand to Mo, who took it without speaking. But there was really no need for him to speak. His eyes said it all. I glanced around at each of the boys, from Little Man and Christopher John to Stacy and Mo. It was evident that each was entranced by Suzella. As for me, I didn't know if I even liked her. What are you doing, Cassie? I looked around at Suzella. It seemed perfectly obvious to me what I was doing. Sitting on the back porch with one foot in hot water and the other crossed over my leg and a needle plunged in my big toe. What else could I be pulling out? Jiggers? What else could I be doing? What else could I be doing but pulling out jiggers? Oh, but she don't know that. She from up north. She don't know. I wanted to tell her just what I thought about her stupidity, but reminded myself that she was a guest. I kept my remarks to myself. As far as I was concerned, she asked just too many questions anyway, though no one else seemed to think so. They were all too crazy about her. Since her arrival, she had managed to endear herself to just about everyone. Christopher John, the Little Man, couldn't do enough for her, and Stacy, who never had time for me anymore, could always find time for Suzella. She was forever in the kitchen laughing and talking with Big Ma, eager to do her bidding and claiming to want to learn all her recipes, and she even had taken to calling her Big Ma, which didn't sit too well with me. After all, Big Ma was not her grandmother. She also spent a good deal of time with Mama, and the two of them laughed and talked like good friends instead of an aunt and great niece. At church, she had been met with the same welcome. All the young men of marrying age and boys old enough to be impressed by the female figure turned adoring eyes upon her as soon as she arrived. Mo, dressed in his patched but clean white shirt and string of a tie, had come all the way from Smellings Creek to attend church, a trek he seldom made on a Sunday since there was a perfectly good church only a mile from his home. Joining us, he had stood nervously and silently by as Clarence and Little Willie, among others of Stacy's friends, had sauntered over in feigned nonchalance. Suzella had been cordial to each one, but granted no special attention to any of them. Instead, she had stayed close to Mama and Big Ma and allowed none of the boys a moment alone with her. Nonetheless, everyone adored her, and by the time Cousin Bud left a few days later, she had not only been accepted by the community, but was firmly entrenched in the family circle as well. I, however, was not won over. She was a guest and a cousin, which meant that I had to be nice to her. It didn't mean I had to like her. When I didn't answer her question, Christopher John spoke up quickly. She pulling out jiggers. In summertime, you always got to look out for jiggers because we go barefooted all the time. Every night before we go to bed, Mama say we got to wash our feet and check them real good so as to see if jiggers done got in them. But sometimes you just don't see them till a day or so later and they get to hurting. And you don't get them, they can make you sick. Wait a minute. And you don't get them, they can make you so sick because they get in and they get big. little man added. He turned to Christopher John. Remember that time old Baker Norris got them jiggers in his foot and didn't get them out? That old foot got this big. He demonstrated the swelling of Baker Norris's foot with his hands. Swole all up. Suzella grimaced, then came closer to watch me as I expertly plunged the needle farther into the tough outer tissue of my toe to get out the dark mass below. Does it hurt? She asked. I finished tearing back the skin. Will too, you gotta go any deeper, contradicted little man. Uh-oh, there it is. He and Christopher John drew nearer and all watched in curious silence as I gently sank the needle once more into the skin and attempted to slip it beneath the flea. Assured that the needle was in position, I pulled up slowly to extract the jigger, but as sometimes happened, the mass broke into at the pressure. Ah, shoot, I cried. I better get Big Ma, said Christopher John, getting up. Her and Mama, they's in the field, little man said. What's the matter? Asked Suzella. Well, once they break, they gets awful hard to get out, explained Christopher John, and they gotta come on out now or they'll work their way back in. Cassie keep picking at it. She's gonna have her foot so sore she won't be able to walk on it. I ain't gonna get it sore, I retorted, wiping the blood from the needle before plunging it in once more. But the skin did feel tender, and despite willing myself not to, I flinched noticeably. Here, let me try, said Suzella. I looked up at her as if she were crazy, then back to... Cassie is a hot mess. I looked up at her like she was crazy, then back to my toe. I wasn't about to let her near my foot. I started to work again, but Suzella softly touched my hand, stopping my attempt. Cassie, I'm good at this sort of thing. Really, I won't hurt you. Yeah, I know you won't, because I'm going to do it myself. Please, Cassie, people say I have a gentle touch. If you feel any pain at all, then I'll stop. Cassie, let her try, said Christopher John. I eyed Suzella doubtfully as she smiled and took the needle. She sat down beside me and cradled my foot in her lap. Then, as I tensed, waiting for the pain and kicking myself for the fool that I was to let some girl who didn't even know what a jigger was put a needle in my foot, she put the tip of the needle against my skin, but not where I had already opened it. Girl, what are you doing? I cried. You've already got it sore there, Cassie, she said, without looking up. It's better I try to get it from this way. Deftly, she picked open the skin and, probing gently, worked the needle below the black mass. Although at one point I did feel a twinge of pain, I didn't tell her, for the jigger was deep, and there were times when even Big Mom could not extract the creatures without some pain. There it is, you got him, cried little man as Suzella brought out part of the mass. She smiled, then wordlessly went after the rest. When it too was out, she sat back, a look of satisfaction on her face. Did it hurt, Cassie? She asked. I took my foot from her lap and inspected it. Just one time, but that's okay. Wait a minute before you walk on, she said, standing. I've got some alcohol my mother packed. We should put some on your toe so it won't get infected. It ain't going to get infected, I said. Well, this way we'll make sure it won't. As soon as the kitchen door closed behind her, Christopher John admonished, Ooh, Cassie, you didn't even say thank you. I looked at him, then back at my foot. I'll thank her, I said, if the alcohol don't burn. Girl, you know the alcohol gonna burn. Cassie being a little snooty. In the afternoon, little man and Christopher John entered the house, fishing poles in hand, and announced, We going fishing. Suzella, you want to come? Although neither Stacy or I had been invited, we grabbed poles from the barn as well and went along. This was Suzella's first trip into the forest, and she seemed enthralled by the pines and the oaks and the sweet gums surrounding us. But as we went deeper into the forest and the trees began to thin, exposing stumps and the fallen trees, she wanted to know what had happened. I told her nothing, since I figured that she had found out quite enough about us and our land, but Stacy told her about the lumbermen and how they had destroyed so much of the forest until Mama had sent him to Louisiana to get Papa, who had stopped them. Suzella seemed saddened by the account, and as we walked on, she said nothing further until we came to the pond. This here's the Caroline, Christopher John informed her. Big Ma say Grandpa called it that after her. It's lovely. Suzella took a long look around, and after nodding her approval, said, All right, now what's the first thing we do about fishing? The boys showed her doing practically everything from digging the worms out of the soft ground of the bank to baiting the hooks. Had she wanted them to, they would probably have held the pole, and as it was about the only thing they didn't do was put the fish on the end of it. Sickened by the whole thing, I left my pole where it was and went looking for a sweet gum tree. When I found one with its bark cracked and oozing out its chewy goodness for anyone who cared to take it, I went back to Stacy and asked him for his penknife. Already settled on the bank with his fishing pole in hand, he looked up irritably. What for? Just want to borrow it, that's all. I said, what for? If you just gotta know, I want to get me some gum. Now let me have it. Stacy glanced over at Suzella. You want some gum? Lord, I murmured. Suzella said she did, and for her, Stacy got up and went over to my sweet gum. Curious, Suzella jumped up and followed him, with me tagging along behind. What are you doing? Suzella asked as Stacy scraped a glob of gum from the tree. You said you wanted some gum. We get it from sweet gum trees like this. Like this here. But I thought, she looked at the gum on the knife and laughed. I've never seen natural gum before. Well, you want it or not? I asked crossly. Of course. She peeled off the gum and stuck it into her mouth. She grinned at the taste. Like it? Said Stacy. It's lovely. Let me have the knife, I said, putting out my hand to take it, but Stacy wouldn't give it to me. I'll get the gum for you. He hollered to Christopher, John, and Little Man to see if they wanted any, and the two of them came running. Boy, I don't see how come you won't let me use your old knife. I ain't gonna hurt it none. Stacy slid off another glob of gum. Here. Chew it yourself. One of these days, I'm gonna get me my own knife, and I won't have to be asking you for yours. You so particular about who using it. With that, I went back to the pond and took up my pole. Later, when each of us had several fish to our credit and Suzella had calmed down after her excitement of actually catching a fish, she started asking questions again, this time about Mr. Morrison. I was just wondering why he didn't stop the men from cutting the trees. Wasn't here, said Stacy. He come a few months after that. Papa brung him. Suzella nodded thoughtfully. I just can't get over how big he is. In fact, he's so big he frightens me just a little. He would never hurt you none, reassured Christopher John gently. You're family. But folks made him mad enough, though. He sure enough can't hurt him bad, all right, bragged Little Man. He's stronger than anybody. I bet you he's the strongest man in the world. We seen him lift a car one time. And last year, he broke a man's back. Man, said Stacy quietly. Little Man glanced over at Stacy, knowing he should say no more, and grew quiet. Suzella looked from Little Man to Stacy. What is it? Stacy was silent a moment before he answered. Nothing. It's just something we don't talk about much. How come? Stacy studied Suzella as if considering whether or not he should tell her. He decided against it. 'Cause we just don't. That's all. But I said, 'cause the man's back he broke was white. Cassie, Stacy cried, reproval etching his face. Well, if she's family, I don't see how come she shouldn't know. White folks are always doing something or other, and you know Papa just say you can't much trust none of them. Hush up, Cassie. I turned on Stacy. What you telling me to hush up for? It's the truth. Stacy's eyes met mine, and he said harshly, you know you talking about things ain't supposed to be talked about. Christopher John, the Little Man, looked at me sympathetically, but they knew what Stacy said was true. I knew it too. There were some things that were not to be discussed with anyone outside of our own family circle. This was one of them. I got up. I'm going back to the house. I'll go with you, Cassie, said Suzella, jumping up after me. I glanced back to her. You ain't got to go 'cause of me. No, I want to. Suit yourself, I said as the boys got up too. When we emerged from the forest, Stacy pulled me aside. You just better be glad Suzella didn't take offense to what you said. You know, good and well you ain't supposed to offend company, and she's company. So you just better learn to keep a lid on that mouth of yours around here. I didn't say anything, just cut my eyes at him. But as he walked away, I couldn't help but resent Suzella. Stacy had been hard enough to live with these past few months. I certainly didn't need the additional frustration of having him defend Suzella against me. I wanted things to be as they had been, but Suzella was just making things worse. And I looked forward to the day when she was packed and gone. Crossing the backyard, I went through the garden to Mr. Morrison's cabin. Other than me, he seemed to be the only one not affected by Suzella, or at least he didn't seem to favor her above anybody else, and I wanted to talk to him about her. Mr. Morrison, you in there? I called, knocking on the door. There was no answer. Feeling dejected, I sat on the plank step and looked out at the house. I could see Christopher John and Little Man playing in the yard, and Big Mom making a momentary appearance on the back porch. For several minutes, I sat there waiting. Then, deciding it was Mama I should talk to, I got up and went back to the house. Where's Mama? I asked Big Ma as she entered the kitchen. Hold on, I'm trying to see if this chapter stopped. Okay. Where's Mama? I asked Big Ma as I entered the kitchen. Big Ma turned from her pot of black-eyed peas and glanced at me. She's back in the house there, she said, then frowned at the pot. Excuse me. And dipping a spoon into the liquid, tasted it. As I left, she was reaching for the salt. Entering Mama's room, I found no one there, but I heard Mama's and Suzella's voices coming from my room. I sighed and went over to the doorway. Now, just what would I look like with a city lady's clothes on way out here in the country? Mama asked Suzella as I entered. Dressed in a pale blue dress of Suzella's, Mama was standing in front of the mirror, scrutinizing the fit. The dress was wraparound in style with padded shoulders, and it looked elegant on Mama. Standing side by side, both of them slender and tall, Mama and Suzella looked like sisters. But Aunt Mary, you're so slender, you can wear this simple cut and look absolutely grand. I copied this from a magazine I got at the library. Mama smiled, and after brushing back a strand of her long, coarse hair, which had slipped from the chignon knotted against the back of her neck, she put her hands on her hips, threw back her head, and struck a model's pose. I do look rather good, don't I? She laughed. Suzella struck a similar pose. But of course, we both do. We look so good, we could be models for Vogue. Vogue, Mama said, still holding her position. That's a very stylish New York magazine of high fashion. I love looking through it. Mama inspected herself closely in the mirror. I wouldn't imagine there are any colored models in that very stylish magazine. Suzella glanced over at her. No, they probably think we're not much interested in any kind of clothes. Mama walked her model's walk, then laughed, turned, and hugged Suzella, who laughed too. As she released Suzella, she saw me. Cassie, how do you like Suzella's dress on me? You look pretty. I'm trying to get Aunt Mary to let me redo a couple of her dresses in this style. I've gotten pretty good at ripping apart old dresses and making new ones from them. Come on, Aunt Mary, let me do it. Well, I turned to go. Cassie, did you want something, honey? No, ma'am. I was just looking. Going back into the kitchen, I leaned against the cabinet, silently watching Big Ma as she carved strips of bacon from a side of meat. You found your mama? She asked. Yes'm. Big Ma, how long is Suzella going to be here? Oh, I don't know. I don't rightly know. Till her papa come get her, I reckon. I wish he'd come on tomorrow. Big Ma stopped her cutting and stared down at me. Now, how come you want to say a thing like that? I shrugged. That Suzella, she just gets on my nerves. Now, what she do to you? She just always in the way, that's all. Me and Christopher John and Little Man and Stacy, we don't ever get to be alone no more. Seem to me, you just got a bad case of the jealous. Just 'cause you ain't the only girl in this family no more, ain't no reason to go disliking that child. Well, that ain't all. She looked near white. Now, what she looked like ain't got nothing to do with it. Your grandpa was mulatto, and I looked at it, and it didn't make no difference to me. That child ain't had nothing to do with her mama being a white woman, and we ain't got nothing to do with it neither. Big Ma resumed her slicing, but kept her eyes sternly fixed on me. Now, I expect you to be nice to Suzella. That girl's your company. What's more, she your blood, so you just best get your head straightened out right now about treating her right. 'Cause we ain't gonna have none of that jealous business in this house. You hear me, girl? Yes'm, I murmured, and went on to the porch. For a moment, I just stood there. Then, seeing the speck that was Lady galloping across the pasture, I went to join her. At least Lady was not crazy about Suzella. Suzella was afraid of horses. The law said the marriage of a white person with a Negro or mulatto or person who shall have 1/8 or more of Negro blood shall be unlawful and void. I looked up at Mrs. Leanne and thumped the page of the Constitution I had just read. Now that one I understand, I said. Mama told me about the word void, meaning something can't be used. Mrs. Leanne laughed delightedly. Better be one we all understands, or we sure enough will be trouble. Now, which one of them articles that one? 14, I said, section 263. 14, section 263. All right, I got that. Now, how it goes again? When Mrs. Leanne and I finished our reading, I crossed the yard and headed down the woodland trail toward the stream where Christopher John and Little Man had gone with Don Lee. As I approached the stream, music mixed with the quiet of the forest and drifted southward through the trees. Intrigued by the sound, I left the path in search of its source. Going inward some 500 feet from the trail, I came to a high perch overlooking the stream. Wardell was haunched there, his harmonica to his lips, his eyes on the stream below. Squirrels, which had settled in the pines, nearly scurried away, and the blackbirds, which had strutted over the forest ground, pecking for their afternoon meal, fluttered to escape as I emerged. As they did, Wardell stopped playing and looked at me. Don't stop, I said. I just heard the music and wanted to get closer. I sure like your music. Wardell stared at me, then, looking back at the stream, slipped the harmonica into his pocket. When he made no move to leave, I hesitated, then hunched beside him. Below us, wading in the stream and shrieking with laughter, were Christopher John, Little Man, and Don Lee. Suzella, who had also come along, sat on a log nearby, encouraging them in their play. Christopher John yelled for her to join them, but Suzella refused, saying that her dress would get wet. Well, I got a pen, cried Don Lee, as captivated as the rest of the boys. You can pin it. That's what my sisters do. Suzella, with the dress pulled up and in between her long legs, Suzella, with the dress pulled up and between her long legs and secured by the pin, tossed off her sandals and laughing, dashed into the water, where she immediately became it in a game of water tag. Before Suzella had come, I had always joined in the water play, but now that Suzella was here, I wasn't even missed. Yeah, I mumbled, take over that too. Wardell looked at me, and surprised at myself for having spoken, I glanced over at him, then back to the stream and shrugged. I thought he would look away, but when he didn't, I turned back to him. Well, that old Suzella just done about got on my last nerve, I exploded, tired of trying to keep my feelings to myself. I guess she nice enough, but ever since she come, things been all different. She just all the time around talking to Big Ma and Mama like they her grandma and mama, and Christopher John and Little Man, they just want her to do everything with them. What's worse, Stacy, he always call himself so busy, can't go nowhere with me, but soon as Suzella asks him to do anything, he's right there. Big Ma, she say I'm jealous, but that ain't it. At least, that ain't all of it. I just want things back the way they was before she come. If she was going to stay a week or two or more, it wouldn't be so bad. But now she's talking about staying till September sometime, and that's just too long. I just want her to get on the train and get on back home. Wardell's eyes had not strayed from me as I vented my rage against Suzella. Now he turned and looked again at the stream. Feeling somewhat awkward about my outburst and not knowing what Wardell was thinking, I said nothing further as I too watched the play. After several minutes, I stood. I gotta go. Wardell did not turn to look at me. His gaze remained on the stream. I started down the trail. Cassie. I stopped and turned. Wardell was looking at me. You're wrong and you know it, he said. Then, standing, he pulled the harmonica from his pocket and put it to his lips again. Turning his back to me, he walked deeper into the forest, leaving his music to trail him. I waited until the music was so faint that I could no longer distinguish between it and the sounds of the forest, then continued down the trail. I felt miserable. I don't think she's so pretty, said Mary Lou Wellever after Sunday school. Oh, I know she's your cousin, Cass, and she looks all right, but she ain't looking all that good. Ignoring Mary Lou, who had just come up with Gracie Pearson and Alma Scott as I sat on the steps of the lower grades class building, I continued searching the yard for Wardell. Although he seldom came into church for Sunday school or the sermon, he was usually around the fringes of the church with Joe. But today I had not seen him, and I needed to see him, for I knew that I had said more than I should have about Suzella, and I was afraid Wardell thought less of me because of it. I was unsure what I would say to him once I did see him, or if he would even be interested enough to listen to me, but I had to try. I bet you one thing, though, Gracie giggled. I bet you she thinks she's prettier than J.C. Peters. Mary Lou frowned. I don't think that J.C.'s pretty at all. I guess you don't, laughed Alma, seeing that Stacy's always talking to her. There they go now. Stacy and JC were crossing the schoolyard alone, having just left the group of older boys and girls at the end of the field. Stacy was doing all the talking, but JC was nodding, her eyes on him as if greatly interested in what he was saying. Well, I just think he's so cute, said Mary Lou, and I just don't see what he sees in that old JC. I bet you he sees something in her you wish he'd see in you, teased Alma. Ah, hush up, cried Mary Lou. I got up. Where are you going, Cassie? Mary Lou asked. I stared at her. All of a sudden, her interest in me had risen markedly. I glanced out at Stacy, knowing that he was not yet that hard up. I ain't going over to where Stacy is, if that's what you're wondering. No, I walked away, tired of their chatter. As I crossed the yard, I noticed Jake Willer standing alone at the lower grades building, his eyes on the circle of young women near the church. I studied the group, knowing even before I looked that Suzella was in it. As much as I disliked Suzella, it bothered me that Jake Willis had taken to her. He was as old as Papa, maybe older, but since Suzella had arrived, he had watched her with the same intensity as the boys and young men. But his look was different. There was something distasteful about it. I saw Joe and asked him about Wardell. He told me he hadn't seen him since before Sunday school. Despondent, I joined Sunboy and Maynard, who were standing with Little Willie, Mo, Clarence, and 2 9th grade boys, Ron and Don Shorter. She smiled at me, man, claimed Don as I walked up. Just parted them pretty lips, showed them pearlies, and smiled. Ah, man, she was looking at all of us, argued Little Willie. But didn't you hear? She called me by my name. She know who I am. Man, she ought to know more than that, cried Ron, Don's twin brother. If me and Stacy were as tight as you two were supposed to be, I'd have his cousin all to myself. I looked around feeling just a bit crushed. Despite myself, I had begun to look at Ron Shorter in a new light lately, and his continued attention to Suzella bothered me, even though I knew he would never even look at me. I was too young. What about you, Mo? Ron said. How you doing? What? You and Suzella, man, Ron repeated, laughing. How you getting along with Suzella? Mo seemed distracted. Oh, fine. Sure, said Ron derisively. Ah, face it, said Clarence. Suzella ain't hardly thinking about none of us. She probably got some high-toned boyfriend up in New York. Well, boyfriend or not, me and Suzella gonna get together, claimed little Willie. The shortest laughed. How? Well, I tell you. The bell began to ring, and by the time it had stopped, little Willie had reconsidered sharing his thought and walked off with Clarence. Don and Ron followed with good-natured teasing. Mo, his head down and his hands in his pockets, went along behind him. I touched his arm. Anything the matter, Mo? He shook his head. But you so quiet. Well, it's just that, he looked out across the yard. Our cow died last night, and Papa's real broken up about it. Seemed like it's just one thing after another. Ah, Mo, I'm sorry. He shrugged. Crop be good, maybe we get another cow. I knew that was a hopeless dream, but I didn't say it. What about till then? He smiled crookedly. Till then we drink water, he said, and walked on alone. What's the matter with him? Some boy asked, coming along with Maynard. He feeling down and out about Suzella like the rest of these fellas. I turned on him. Now, how come everything gotta be about Suzella? Just 'cause she here don't mean folks ain't got other things to be thinking about. Maybe not, said Maynard, grinning, but she what a lot of folks want to be thinking about. Well, me for one, I'm just about tired of hearing about her every time I turn around. Some boy laughed. Ah, Cassie, you just jealous 'cause she's so pretty. Uh-oh, there's old Deacon Backwater with that switch of his. We better get on inside. After church, I stood in front of the mirror, my church dress still on, and harshly examined myself. I was long-legged and growing. The dress, which Uncle Hammer had given me last Christmas, was already too short, but other than height, nothing else seemed to have changed. I turned sideways and stuck out my chest, flat. There was no hint of a womanly figure anywhere. I sighed, then objectively tried to assess my good points. Though my facial features favored Papa, my skin coloring was a yellowish brown like Mama's, and my body build was slender. At least that was good. My hair was done up in my favorite hairdo, one long braid on the side and another at back center, with each coiled in a small bun and pinned against my head. It had always been an outstanding feature because of its length and thickness, but I had never managed to do anything with it. To get it to look anything at all, Mama or Big Ma had to comb it. Otherwise, it was disastrous. For several minutes, I stood in front of the mirror, wondering how long it would be before anybody thought I was pretty like Suzella, or if Ron Shorter ever would. I wondered if boys would ever look at me the way they looked at Suzella, then wondered why I cared. Suddenly, without thinking, I pulled the pins from my fine hairdo, unbraided my hair, and ran the comb through it. Parting it on the side, I tried to get it to hang like Suzella's, but it bushed out full and thick like a huge black halo around my head. Why don't you let me comb it for you? I wheeled around. I hadn't heard Suzella come in. I can comb it myself, I told her angrily and turned back to the mirror. With the comb in hand, I attempted to restyle it as it had been. Suzella moved across to a chair and sat down to watch me. You know, Cassie, you've got such pretty hair, but if you want to hang like mine, you'll have to straighten it. I turned on her. Who said I wanted to hang like yours? Well, you think you such a big deal that everybody's around here trying to look like you or something? I never said. I like my hair just fine like it is. I ain't trying to change it neither, like yours or nobody else's. I didn't say you were, Cassie. Mama says there's all sorts of ways I can wear my hair when I get a bit older. Says she learned it when she was in school in Jackson and says she's going to show me. When Suzella didn't reply to that, I went back to work on my hair. I managed to get a braid in the front and one in the back, but the hair all around the braids was puckered and the part separating the braids crooked. If Suzella had not been in the room and I had not been so angry at her for interfering or at myself for taking my hair down in the first place, I would have laughed. As it was, I simply coiled the braids in a circle and pinned them down. Having done the best I could, I changed into a school dress and turned to leave. Cassie, why don't you like me? I stopped and stared at Suzella. I had never expected that she would put the question to me point blank. I like you all right. No, I don't think so. Ever since I came, there's been something about me that you don't care for. Have I done something to you? I looked out the window. You ain't done nothing. Then is it because, Cassie, my mother's white? I looked at her but didn't say anything. Cassie, you can't just not like me because my mother's a white woman. My mother's simply my mother and my father, and I love them both just like you love yours. Don't blame me for something I can't help. Cassie, Big Ma said she